Today's talk is titled Emotional Freedom Technique. Mere placebo effect, or is it for real? To be delivered by Maria Rowe. After practicing as a licensed MFT for over 25 years, Maria is now retired. During her years of practice, she worked using an eclectic approach, which included the emotional freedom technique, or tapping, for clients who were open to it as an adjunct to other psychotherapeutic methods. In 1998, at the age of 49, Maria earned her Master of Counseling Psychology from the University of Santa Monica, USM, which offered a unique spiritual psychology program. Fundamental to the program was regarding the self with compassion and love, and in addition, relying on self-forgiveness as an antidote to self-judgment. It was there she first became aware of the connections between emotions, thoughts, and energy. With that background, she naturally gravitated to EFT as a result. After getting her MFT license, Maria used it with herself and with her clients. She used the technique for dealing with a range of emotional and psychological issues. To this day, she continues to use it regularly as a personal practice. Maria.
Welcome. I want to take a deep breath and tap. When I was, let me remember the slides. When I was a young girl, my Grandma Grace, maternal grandmother, used the pressure of her fingers on my face whenever I had a headache. And within minutes, my headache, can't hear? Oh. Okay. When I was a young girl, Grandma Grace, my maternal grandmother, used the pressure of her fingers on my face whenever I had a headache. And within minutes, my headache vanished. It was magic. Looking back, I think those healing experiences with my grandma's touch were my initiation to alternative healing. Thank you. Then, since my mid-30s, I explored many energy healing methods, mostly Eastern, some of which are considered rather woo-woo. I tried NAET, Numbhadrapad Allergy Elimination Technique, for allergies to my cat and strawberries. I had suffered with itching, teary eyes, and nasal decongestion from my cat allergy for years. And I was miserable from a rash I would develop inside my mouth from eating strawberries. And I love strawberries. My doctor tapped on meridians linked to the allergy. After one treatment each, and then staying away from the allergy for only 25 hours, I was cured, and it never reoccurred. Those healings added to my accepting energy healing. On another occasion, I had an extraordinary healing with Reiki for intense knee pain. I couldn't walk more than a block. After one brief treatment, I was able to walk pain-free. The healer said I'd done all the emotional work related to my pain, and all she had to do was release it. That expanded my awareness of how pain and emotions were linked and how they could be treated with energy work. So from these woo-woo or magical experiences that involved acupressure, tapping, energy healing, and emotion pain connections, I was primed for EFT tapping. Quite by accident, around 2005, I discovered EFT. At the time, it was considered woo-woo, and that didn't matter to me. I'd already been initiated to energy healing and was receptive. The EFT I learned The EFT I learned was developed by Gary Craig, and it was derived from thought field therapy by Dr. Roger Callahan. Both TFT and EFT use tapping on the meridians in conjunction with aspects of neurolinguistic programming. Callahan's version was very complicated and required a trained therapist. Craig's, on the other hand, was much easier to learn and could be self-administered. I took Craig's self-study course from a set of 12 VCR tapes. I don't believe I put that many tapes in the VCR. I'm amazed how long ago that was. Shortly afterward, he provided online lessons, which helped me a great deal. To this day, Craig's version of EFT is regarded as foundational to more simplified versions that are now available on the internet. His version involved using the fingers to tap on points on the head, face, torso, and several other points on the hands, while breathing deeply and reciting a litany of phrases. His technique used one hand. A while later, I learned that using both hands was valid, and I tap two-handed now. Not to read that, just showing you. The EFT tapping points correspond to meridians used in Chinese medicine. The theory behind EFT, according to Craig, is that negative emotions are stored in the body and organs and cause disturbances in the body's energy field, and that tapping on the meridians while connecting with a negative thought or emotion alters the body's energy field, thus restoring it to balance. Largely because Craig had success with veterans suffering from PTSD and clients having other emotional and physical complaints, it got my attention. I wanted to work on my generalized anxiety, which actually I was diagnosed with. I had some classic PTSD symptoms like startle responses and dissociation, and others like shaky knees, I still have that, when speaking in public, and sweaty hands. It doesn't go away, but I recover from them. I'd grown up in a family where feelings were taboo, and speaking up was punished. Mistakes were unacceptable, and my critical inner voice grew very strong, and fear of failure was inhibiting. For years before finding EFT, I tried meditation for my anxiety, but meditating was hard for me, mostly because I had difficulty staying present. I sense I gravitated to EFT because my dominant way of processing input is kinesthetic. In fact, EFT is described as a somatic meditation. Tapping on the meridians over my body gives me grounding touchstones and helps me keep my mind from wandering. And because I tap with both hands, when I get to the underarm points, you can see UA, it's like giving myself a reassuring hug. Through my initial EFT study, I noticed that when I tapped while I expressed my upset, I was able to get in touch with my emotions much more deeply than through traditional talk therapy. I would often tear up, and because I was not relying on being with a therapist, I could work my process whenever I needed, privately and anywhere. I offer a caveat here, however. I'd had years of individual therapy on deep issues before my training as a psychotherapist. During my spiritual psychology training, I gained skill working my upsets alone. But people who have experienced serious trauma and haven't done sufficient work with a therapist might need to exercise caution doing it by themselves. So with clients, I was cautious and would only work on the deep issues first before introducing EFT. I did have a client who, after I introduced her, decided to tap solo. And she came back one day and said, "It was quite handy." When I was triggered by my volatile boss, she had gone into a bathroom stall and calmed herself down on the spot. Without our foundational therapy, I'm not sure how she might have fared, but I know she uses it today, even though our therapy has ended. Craig's tapping sequence required that you first sense into a challenging feeling and name it and assign it an intensity from 1 to 10. This slide is an example of working on my mother's rage when I was a child. I tapped on the karate chop point with one hand and 2 fingers from the other and recited the setup phrase 3 times. Even though I felt so unsafe, so shut down when she would rage at me, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Stress on the completely love and accept myself. Then I tapped on the other points as reminder phrases. Didn't feel safe, shut down, so afraid, ears hurt, wanted to hide, so mean, all that yelling, so hateful, lashed out at me, unsafe. How could she? So scared, shut down, and unsafe. At the time, I remember it taking many rounds before the intensity would go down to a 1 or a 2. And that's common with old wounds, but it can still take a long time, depending on how calm you are and how you can calm yourself down with your breath and just tapping longer on the points. So during that time then, it's quite common to have other unacceptable feelings pop up, like shame, hate, or contempt. So you tap on them. Give yourself enough rounds on all the challenging feelings. Gently own them and connect with your higher self to offer compassion, acceptance, and love through it all. Quite honestly, intense anger can trigger me to this day, being exposed to it, like some people we know. So now I tap knowing to connect with my mother's rage as a source and calm myself down. Remembering painful feelings can backfire, even when done with a trained therapist. With EFT, however, expressing the setup phrase and tapping on all of the points round after round can induce a calming effect despite recalling a traumatic event. Master trauma specialist Bessel van der Kolk describes his use of EFT tapping, particularly where dissociation and painful recovered memories might derail healing. I quote van der Kolk, "I don't think I could do the practice anymore if I couldn't tap. Tapping is a very important part of my work because it helps people stay within the window of tolerance. The big thing is people either go to the roof and become hyper, or they shut down and become hypo. Tapping is one very nice way to get people even keel. So with everybody who comes to see me who has a serious trauma history, we start by tapping." Through my spiritual psychology training, I became profoundly aware as a child I'd learned to dissociate and shut down in reaction to my mother's abusive behavior. Shutting down and not speaking up for myself carried a lot of shame, and that shame in turn spawned harsh judgments towards myself and my mother, but mostly unconsciously. I now believe those judgments cascaded into separation from myself and from her. I had to move 3,000 miles away. And separation from my higher self. All that separation created even more pain, grief, loss, and regrets. And the cycle of hurt and separation repeated. Through my training, I became acutely aware of my disconnections from myself and my mother and spirit. Moreover, I learned about self-compassion, self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, and how to apply loving towards healing the hurt inside to mend those severed connections. Thus, EFT dovetailed with my spiritual psychology training. Thankfully, by using EFT, I was able to process painful memories in a very different way from years of talk therapy, which had only served to create more distance between me and my mother by retelling those stories. Eventually, EFT helped me to hold compassion for myself and her while still acknowledging the pain. Gratefully, there was healing between us before she died in 2007. Often a client would resist saying, "I deeply and completely love and accept myself." I sense that years of self-judgment might have closed their heart to themselves. Feeling compassion for and acceptance of themselves was hard to allow, yet it was vital for their healing. So, through tips I gathered from conferences, rewording that phrase was key. Saying, I'm willing to learn to love and accept myself, and then adding the word anyway seemed to get over that hurdle. Again, anything that offers psychological safety is vital for healing, vital for feeling calm and staying connected to oneself and another. Steve Porges' polyvagal theory illustrates how our nervous systems, each of us, are affected by our experiences. Our fight, flight, and crash reactions and our states of calm and equilibrium are illustrated here. Don't pay attention to the details. It's just that we can spike. When our sense of safety is assaulted by another person's behavior or an overwhelming crisis, we can go into fight, flight, or crash very, very quickly. Our nervous systems go into overdrive, and our ability to act in ways that preserve our connections with ourselves, dissociation is that disconnection, or with others is derailed. So our reptilian reactions show up, and we might lash out, reject, or dissociate, all of which create separation from ourselves and another. And that state of disconnection needs calm and repair to get back into balance. I used to exhibit elements of crash and flight to angry tirades. Now I'm more aware of my distress by listening to my body shutting down or wanting to run away. I'm alerted that my nervous system is not in a state of calm, so EFT supports me to get my nervous system back into balance. I don't specifically recall working on my shaky knees when giving a presentation or compulsive nail biting, which I'd started as a child and continued well into my 50s. However, I believe the accumulated times I've processed my anxiety and self-judgment might have affected my standing here more solidly today, and very regularly, I need to clip my nails. Since 2007, siblings Nick, Jessica, and Alex Ortner have contributed to EFT's reach worldwide and to its use as a self-help tool by millions of people. Nick and Jessica sponsored EFT conferences, developed the tapping solution manual and online app, and numerous YouTubes, which you can get. There's hundreds of them. They simplified the tapping sequence by eliminating quite a few points. So none on the hands, none underneath by the rib cage. So it's easier to illustrate that one for sure. And Alex published a children's book with the intent of helping children deal with their emotions and traumas to help them move forward. After my initial study with Gary Craig's materials, I got tips from many EFT masters at the conferences they sponsored. Although most masters mentioned only anecdotal cases, still, I evolved my EFT practice to include their tips for adding many types of affirmations. After the initial tapping rounds, I now incorporate more rounds of expressing choices, identifying behaviors to act on, setting intentions for the highest good, forgiving myself, forgiving others, voicing gratitude, reinforcing trust, and more. And then the last month or so since the election, I've been using the last three a lot. I sense this practice has helped me to install new stories, new programs, as it were, into my mind, body, spirit, and that, in psychotherapy terms, is a litany like using narrative therapy with NLP somatic anchors. A little technical there. I create and reinforce a new story with repetitive, caring touch. I offer love and acceptance to diffuse self-judgments, but for simply being a human being who has challenging emotions and thoughts. And particularly when adding self-forgiveness, I support healing my relationship with my imperfect self by aligning with my higher self. As I mentioned earlier, when I began, EFT was considered woo-woo. And in the 2000s, early 2000s, if you went to Wikipedia to find out about it, what you'd find would not be encouraging. Indeed, that wiki entry reads, EFT has no benefit as a therapy beyond placebo effect. It is generally characterized as pseudoscience, and it has not garnered significant support in clinical psychology. Without knowing that that entry was written by known skeptics, you might be discouraged from ever trying it. Furthermore, even today, that wiki page does not refer to the 50 randomized controlled studies and hundreds of studies, other studies performed around the world, nor does it mention any of the resulting articles published in 12 peer-reviewed journals that demonstrate the benefits and effectiveness of EFT. In 2000, despite having attended several EFT conferences, the last one I attended was in 2012. And so I didn't keep up with the research, but so much has happened since. In 2014, Dawson Church created an alternate wiki entry as a rebuttal to the original one. And Church, Dr. David Feinstein and Dr. Peter Stapleton have collaborated on studies and published books and articles, causing a positive shift in how the psychological and medical communities regard EFT. Church published the EFT manual, a compilation of instructions for applying basic EFT and its advanced variations. In fact, it's the prescribed manual for the clinical EFT training developed by Dr. Stapleton. Now, EFT has earned credence as a legitimate therapeutic technique for numerous physiological and psychological conditions. And the conversation of its being woo-woo, a placebo effect without scientific validity, has changed significantly. Don't bother reading that, it's too small, but it just gives you an idea with the way the metrics went. Dr. Stapleton has conducted many tests on how one EFT session can improve a range of physiological metrics across the central nervous system: heart rate variability, blood pressure, the endocrine system, cortisol production, immune system markers in the saliva, and many others. Newer studies are looking at the effects on gene expression, brain synchrony, and hormonal synthesis. Stapleton's studies have shown significant reductions in anxiety and stress symptoms, with comparable or superior outcomes to traditional therapies like CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. In fact, MRI neuroimaging studies have shown similar changes in brain activation patterns from both EFT and psychotherapy. Clinical trials worldwide continue to demonstrate EFT's potential to alleviate a range of psychological and physical symptoms. Besides PTSD, the list includes OCD, reductions in chronic pain perception, food cravings and addictions, improved sleep quality, and eyesight, to name a few. But although so many positive findings exist, much more robust research is needed to fully understand EFT's efficacy across diverse populations, and for a range of clinical conditions. Clinical EFT, as developed by Dr. Stapleton, is now considered a stable and mature treatment method that's safe, rapid, reliable, and effective for many psychological and medical diagnoses. A growing number of practitioners regard it as a valuable complementary approach to existing therapies. It's been validated as evidence-based by the American Psychological Association, and as EFT has gained more mainstream recognition, Kaiser Permanente has increasingly integrated it into their complementary and integrative practices. Both organizations state that although it can be self-administered, it's best performed with a professional, specifically trained in clinical EFT by Dr. Stapleton. From my initial exposure to EFT back in the early 2000s, I'd been curious about how it managed to help with anxiety. I wondered how the meridians were related to the nervous system. However, there was no evidence of any direct connection. And when I did research on the meridians, I only found the organs that each meridian connects to, so not very satisfying. Back then, polyvagal theory hadn't been popularized, and there wasn't any data on how EFT tapping could calm the nervous system. Nonetheless, I continued to tap without pursuing my hunch about the connections. When I discovered polyvagal theory, I learned about the vagus nerve and its effect on the two branches of the nervous system. It's intimately related to the stress reactions of fight, flight, and freeze from the sympathetic nervous system and to the states of safety and calm from the parasympathetic nervous system. Indeed, EFT tapping also addresses those two branches. The setup phrase acknowledges the sympathetic nervous system's emotional reactivity and simultaneously offers love and acceptance to induce a sense of safety and calm through the parasympathetic nervous system. Furthermore, tapping has an effect on the amygdala. Calming the amygdala is key to resilience and balance. When activated, a person's higher cognitive resources can be crippled. And when the amygdala is calm, you can access the full resources of your brain to deal better with unsettling or challenging situations. Research actually now shows that tapping sends a message to the amygdala in the brain that it's okay to relax. Thus, polyvagal theory and EFT are quite complementary in aiming to regulate the nervous system and manage emotional distress. Moreover, managing stress can positively affect the whole body. With EFT, deep breathing and tapping on the karate chop affect the amygdala and the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve and other tapping points are connected to the major organs. So when the body's relaxation response is supported, that in turn can support more optimal functioning of the major organs and therefore the digestive, reproductive, circulatory, and endocrine systems. Quite often, I use the entire set of points when I tap, even without words. I think of it as giving my nervous system and organs a gentle, loving tune-up to feel safe despite what's going on with after the election. Will go on. It's a regular thing. I use it all the time. It's reassuring to me that experts like Steve Porges and Bessel van der Kolk have given thumbs up to EFT as a valuable tool for working with disruptions to the nervous system and to restore a sense of safety and well-being. I want to thank Sue Davis for prompting me to give this talk on EFT. Actually, the title came about from what I researched preparing for this talk. Before 2 months ago, EFT was still rather woo-woo in my own mind. I had only my limited experience and merely an intuitive sense that it worked. Obviously, questions remain, yet I'm encouraged by the continuing efforts to study the effects of EFT for a whole range of physical, psychological, and even spiritual conditions. And I'm delighted to have discovered so much to support the actual how and why it works. And I'm honored to be here sharing this loving kindness, somatic meditation for body, mind, and spirit with you. Thank you.